Have you ever felt like you knew what was holding you back, but you just couldn't seem to change it? Maybe you've read the books, taken the courses, even gained some insight into your patterns, and yet you still find yourself stuck in the same cycle of self-doubt, procrastination, or perfectionism. If that sounds familiar, you are not alone. This week, I talked with Jennifer Fidder, a social psychologist and transformational hypnotist who helps high achieving professionals rewire the subconscious patterns that keep us from stepping into our full potential. Jennifer brings a thoughtful and grounded perspective to the conversation around imposter syndrome, fear of failure, and why so many of us struggle to take action even when we know what we want. In this episode, we talk about the hidden logic of the subconscious mind, how hypnosis actually works, and why some of our most frustrating behaviors might be rooted in protective strategies from childhood. Jennifer also shares a powerful reframe of imposter syndrome, not as a flaw, but as a signal that we're growing. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. Welcome to the Impostor Syndrome Files. My name is Kim Menninger, and as an executive coach and former high-tech leader, my personal mission is to help professionals overcome imposter syndrome so that you can advance your career with confidence. Each week, I interview a new guest who brings a powerful perspective to this conversation, including personal stories, best practices, and new insights. The more we talk about this issue, the more we destigmatize imposter syndrome, recognize that we're not alone, and empower ourselves to access the tools and resources that can help us and those around us. Thank you so much for listening and for sharing with others you think would benefit from this conversation. Welcome, Jennifer. It's so great to have you here today. I would love to start by inviting you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me, first of all. And like you said, my name is Jennifer Fidder. I am a social psychologist and hypnotist. I moved actually to the US in 2010 from Germany. And the funny story kind of is I studied in Germany 6 long years to become a social psychologist and educational scientist. When I came to the United States, nobody cared about my degree. So I was like, okay, fine. I did have some degrees and certificates in the fitness field. So I started basically right from the beginning on my own business as a personal fitness trainer. Did that for a long, long time, had some side jobs to pay the bills at the beginning. And then in, I want to say like probably 2019, it was like before the pandemic, some along the line, I became an NLP practitioner and eventually a hypnotherapist, first to help my fitness clients better. And then I just realized the power that hypnosis has and kind of ventured out in other areas. And now I still do a lot of one-on-one hypnosis-based coaching, but I also do workshops. I do speaking engagements. And I'm basically on my second business now, if you will.
So I would love to hear more about, was there a particular area of study that you focused on when you were studying social psychology?
I was always more interested in the mind than like the social part of it, right? So I did a lot of optional courses during my studies where it was really more about, okay, how does our mind really work? Like, why are we doing the things that we're doing? And I think that's also why I kind of gravitated towards the hypnosis field later on, because it was just one more thing that I could learn to make me better understand why we're doing all the things that we're doing.
Yeah, I'm equally fascinated with that too. It's been something I've always been curious about is what's the motivation behind our behavior and the choices that we make.
And it's so fascinating because that field is still relatively at the beginning. I mean, you have now neuroscience coming in and you have all those new research that is being done. So it's just for me, it's just a completely fascinating field that I can just lose myself in and just spend hours just reading through papers.
Exactly. Well, and it sounds like you started with a focus on fitness and then you've expanded since then. What are the kinds of challenges that people come to you with?
So right now and that just kind of happened by accident, if you will. That wasn't intentional. I have a lot of entrepreneurs that come to me. So I work a lot with fear of failure, fear of rejection, imposter syndrome, perfectionism, stress, overwhelm. So everything that I, as an entrepreneur, go through all the time, that's what I help other entrepreneurs with. But I also have other people coming to me if they're in management positions, if they're just like sometimes moms who just feel completely overwhelmed or feel like they're not doing a good job. It's a very wide range of people, but mostly entrepreneurs right now.
And it sounds like the classic kinds of symptoms, so to speak, of people who are very high achieving perfectionists, but struggling with a lot of self-doubt. Right?
Yes. The typical, if you will.
Yes, exactly. So I'm curious about the hypnosis piece because that is an area that is I'm not familiar. I don't have any experience with it. And so I'm curious, like, what that does for you in terms of your ability to support some of these people, how it works. I think that there's probably people listening who don't have a good sense of hypnosis either outside of maybe the movies or the TV shows.
Right. Yeah, and that's usually always the first association that you have with hypnosis, like somebody being on stage, and then making people fall asleep and do the weirdest stuff. That's one way to do it. That's a totally valid form of hypnosis. It's called stage hypnosis. It's purely for entertainment purposes. But there's other type of hypnosis too that can be more transformational and actually make a difference in the world. And the way hypnosis basically works is, and why it works so well, usually when we try to make changes in our life, we come with the logic from the conscious mind, and we want to change something that is inside of our subconscious mind, not realizing that oftentimes there's a different logic behind everything, simply because most of the patterns that we're developing, be it behavior patterns, thought patterns, come from our childhood. It was a mechanism that our subconscious mind developed to protect us from whatever or to make things easier for us. And usually our subconscious mind holds on to those patterns and it doesn't grow with us. So when we get older and we're now like 30, 40 years further ahead, we know on a conscious level, a lot of the things that we're doing are not serving us anymore. But our subconscious mind doesn't realize that. And the advantage that we have with hypnosis is that we have direct access to the subconscious mind and can basically explain the logic and say, hey, I understand where you're coming from. I understand what you're doing. And I appreciate all your help that you want to give me. But this is not serving me right now anymore. And when our subconscious mind understands that, it's usually very quick at letting those patterns go. Because again, the main reason why it does it is to protect us. And if that reason is not a valid reason anymore, then it's like, okay, I guess my job is done. And it just lets it go, right? And that's why change can happen so fast and so rapid with hypnosis, because we have that direct communication that we usually are lacking.
That's so interesting because you said that the sort of non-hypnosis version of trying to address these issues, right, is going through your conscious brain, right, to try to reach the unconscious. And so there's a disconnect there.
Yeah.
Right? But then you're kind of bypass.
Exactly. Like we always say in hypnosis, we always say there's a thing that's called the critical faculty. And I always explain it as a bouncer in front of a club, like a security guy who decides who gets into the club and who doesn't. And that is that barrier that is there. And then when you want to make the changes with the logic from the conscious mind, you're basically always talking to this bouncer and you're trying to explain your case and you're showing him all the evidence. And then he's like, yeah, but that is not what we learned, honey. So we're not changing anything just because you say so, right? And then when you find a way, like you said, to like kind of circumvent that, then it's a lot easier because you're not running into this barrier anymore.
So how does how, if at all, is your conscious mind involved? Like, is this something that's happening without your awareness, or does your conscious mind sort of have a connection? While you're speaking to the subconscious, where is the conscious mind?
Where did it go?
Yeah, where's the bouncer?
So again, there's different ways to do it. The form of hypnosis that I use is a non-trance based hypnosis, meaning my clients are fully awake and they're fully conscious. So their conscious mind is there. They can engage with the whole process if they want to, or they can just look around the room, look against the wall and just count the tiles or whatever they want to do. But they're fully awake. So they understand exactly what's happening. They hear exactly what's happening. And sometimes you can really see in the face, like, oh, this is where it's coming from. Right? So like this aha moment, right? And then you have like your traditional hypnosis where you do the thing with the pendulum and you put people to sleep. Then the conscious mind is pretty much just doing whatever it wants to do and it's not really fully there. But there's different ways to do it.
So, okay. So your way is the conscious mind is
there. Yes. It's fully there.
Yes. Because I was wondering too, how you catch, or if you need to catch up the conscious mind, like how do you then after the fact sort of reintegrate the thinking, or does it matter? Because you were talking about behavior change, pattern change, right? If it's happening at a subconscious level, does your conscious mind even have to be leading the way at that? Like, how do you change your behavior after you've gone through this process?
So one of my mentors, just to like kind of get a better idea of the conscious and the subconscious mind, one of my mentors, Tim Box from the UK, he always says the mind is like a ship. Every ship has a captain and a crew. The captain is the conscious mind. So the captain has a plan. The captain knows what he wants to do, where he wants to go. And the crew is actually the one who are there and they're moving the boat. They're sitting there and they're rowing and they're like 1 and 2 and 1 and 2, right? So they're doing the actual work. So now when you made changes, and I have some clients, and it's kind of funny because they have like this, how can you explain it best? Like this kind of experience where they're looking at themselves from the outside. I just recently had that with a client. We were talking about weight loss and different habits that she had in regards to that with food. And then she told me like a few sessions later, she was like, it's so weird. Like I prepared my food yesterday, like just like that. And before she was always like, oh, now I have to do this. And it's just so horrible, you know? And she's like, I just did it. There was no thinking involved. I just did it. And I was like, yeah. So sometimes you really have like the conscious mind who's just like sitting back and watching. It's like, this is interesting. You know? So, but in general, because it's still part of you, it's like one being. So the conscious mind understands what happened. It's just sometimes you always have this feeling of, is this really happening right now? Did this really change? And that is usually, if we're staying in that analogy of the crew, like different crew members that are kind of watching the scenario and they're like, are we sure this has changed? It can't just change, right? We've been doing this for so long. I mean, look at this, right? And it's just like kind of this disbelief, like, why is it so easy all of a sudden? Right?
Yeah.
But that usually goes away then after a couple of weeks where you realize, no, okay, this is like sustainable change and this is going to stay like this.
Well, you just answered my next question too, the sustainability piece of it, right? So do they have to keep doing any particular type of work to keep this going, or does it just kind of rewire the way that they operate and then it just sticks?
So it's basically, when we're talking about pure hypnosis, it's a rewiring of the brain. Meaning once the subconscious mind understands the pattern that I'm running is not helpful anymore, it lets go of it, and that's usually it. That works best when you have a very specific problem that you want to work on. For example, I have a fear of flying, and I don't want to have a fear of flying anymore. Very simple, right? Not always easy, but very simple. If you have things like, okay, I just feel there's something wrong in my life and I feel unfulfilled and I'm not happy, then you have to kind of dismantle this whole thing and try to find out, okay, what is it? What are we talking about? And then you start making little changes and you have to get to the bottom of it, or you have to find the biggest domino. Like if you change this, then there will be this ripple effect. Or you have a very specific problem, but you didn't address all the objections in the first session. Let's say if we're sticking with that example of fear of flying, usually you have a fear of flying. And then again, you're coming with the logic from the conscious mind and say, hey, I really need to go on a lot of business trips every year. This is not helpful, right? And I can't take the car to get from New York to LA. So, and then there is a reason why the subconscious mind is holding on to this fear. And you have to find those reasons. Those are called objections or barriers, whatever it is. The reason why your subconscious mind says, no, I want to hold on to this fear. And our job as hypnotists during the session is finding those barriers and kind of make the subconscious mind understand, okay, this is not working anymore, right? So if the change doesn't stick, or if the change is not complete after the first session, it's usually a very good indicator that we simply didn't find all the objections. Go back in and say, okay, what else is there that we didn't see? And then when we have that, then it's sustainable. So you have to really make sure that you're removing everything that's blocking the change.
So that's really interesting, because I can see how that becomes a lot more complicated if the problem is more ambiguous.
Yeah.
Right? So can you talk a little bit about what you see with people who struggle with imposter syndrome? Are there usually similar objections underlying it, or do they vary from person to person widely?
Imposter syndrome for me is interesting because it's one of those things we just talked about, sustainable change, right? That tends to come back. And not for the reason that you haven't addressed all the objections, because the way I see imposter syndrome, similar to like I see how anxiety works, is it's really a guiding system. It's not a problem, quote unquote, that needs to be solved, but it's your body, your mind giving you a direction. It's telling you, hey, you're at a point where you're leveling up. Because imposter syndrome usually only comes to those people who already developed a very specific expertise in their field. They already know a lot. And when you know a lot about a topic, you become aware of how much more there's out there that you do not know. And that is when imposter syndrome hits you, right? Where we're like, I had that a lot in my first business with a fitness part. I was also a nutrition coach. And if you really dive into nutrition, there's a lot. Then we come about like hormones, and what if people are pregnant, and what if certain disease, and you can just go on and on for years and study, and you will never know it all. So I always had with nutrition, I always had this feeling of, oh my God, I will never be able to help them. I don't know what I'm talking about, simply because I became aware of how much more there is to know.
That is a really good point. And I think that is something where, especially like you said, if you are highly educated, highly experienced in a particular area, there's never a feeling of completion. Like, oh, I've reached expert status and now there's nothing left. Right. There's just always new information, more.
Unless you're like a complete narcissist.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, exactly. That's what it is.
So when we talk about the rewiring part, are you trying to reshape the relationship we have to our expertise, or what is it that's being addressed through hypnosis when it comes to imposter syndrome?
When it comes to imposter syndrome, it's mainly about a reframe of the experience. Because what happens a lot with imposter syndrome is people let it stop them. Right? When we're talking about maybe they're not applying for the promotion because they feel they're not good enough for it. Or in business, they're not hiring people because they feel they won't be able to, run a company or whatever it is. So it's about us reframing the experience to see imposter syndrome for what it is, the guiding system that I mentioned, and to then use it as exactly that, as like your North Star. Every time it hits again, you're like, oh, okay, we're at the edge of something new. This is awesome. This is exciting. And just with the reframe also comes a different experience, comes a different feeling, comes different emotions. So instead of this fear building up or this just being scared and being frightened and freezing up, you get this, ooh, this is exciting. We're getting to somewhere new, right? This is the next level that I've been waiting for. Oh, yeah. And that's exactly what we want. And that's what we're doing with hypnosis when it comes to imposter syndrome.
And that reminds me of the expression that I heard long ago that I love, which is the only difference between anxiety and excitement is the story you tell yourself, right?
Yes.
Feelings
exactly.
are so similar.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So then do you find people need to come back to you for a tune-up when it comes
for a tune-up? Well, usually when they understand what imposter syndrome means, same thing when they understand what anxiety actually is, then they usually don't come back because they know how to handle it.
Yeah,
right?
They can do it on their own at that point.
Exactly. So they're not attaching those negative emotions to it. And that's a lot what we have with any kind of changes that we want to make. It's always like this negative emotion that's attached to it. And when you can release that, you can move through it and you can overcome it and you can take the next step. Because my work is all about, I need you to take action. Whatever you want to achieve in your life, whatever goal you have, my job is to get you to take action. I don't want you to just reframe your thinking and be like, oh, everything is great now, and then not do anything with it. But if you go out there and you're like, oh, I actually applied for that job, or I asked for more money, or I applied for that promotion, or whatever it is. And then you come back to me and you're like, yeah, that's what I want. That's my goal,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's not just mental, it's
because that's another thing a lot of people get caught up in when we're talking about personal development, and then we can go into things like manifestation and affirmations and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, you can think positively as much as you want to, but if you're not doing anything with it,
that's right,
it's not going to change your life, right? Exactly. So then you're just sitting on your couch with your rose-colored glasses and you're eating your chips and nothing happens. So the point is to actually move the needle and change your life.
Is there a difference in what you see with people with perfectionism? Because perfectionism is often tied to imposter syndrome, but it also feels maybe a little bit more specific. Like, do you see differences in?
Perfectionism is basically a symptom. Perfectionism is rarely the actual problem. It's usually a symptom of any kind of underlying fear, be it a fear of rejection, be it a fear of failure. Because what perfectionism does is, and it usually comes with procrastination, right? Because you want to make this presentation perfect, right? You want it to be so amazing, and then you procrastinate and you're like doing all the little things instead of doing what's really important. Why? Because that happens actually a lot of, like, to the entrepreneurs that I work with, they're so caught up in wanting to make everything perfect that they never put their course out there, or they never show anybody the video they recorded, right? Or they keep redoing their website or whatever it is. So it's just simply another protection mechanism of the subconscious mind. And it kind of makes you feel better because you keep doing things and you're like, no, I'm so busy and I'm doing all I can, but not really doing the things that matter.
Yes, it's a kind of an excuse to not take the scary action, right? Because you're
exactly
the illusion of productivity. Right?
Yep, 100%.
So it sounds like if someone were presenting with that, you want to figure out what are they distracting themselves from, right? What's
exactly
the
what is the actual problem? What is the subconscious mind trying to protect you from?
Yeah. And I think in fear of failure, you mentioned, I think that was the first thing that you said, right? Which really is a big part of everything that we're talking about, is that fear. And I think, it's interesting because we have sort of a very warped view of what failure even means. I think, for many of us, failure is a very dramatic way to describe little mistakes that are really kind of
Yeah.
inconsequential.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, why is that? Because there's always an emotion attached to it, right? And we usually blow things out of proportion instead of seeing it for what it is. Okay, I tried this, it didn't work. What can I learn from it? What can I do differently? If you don't attach any emotion to it, it doesn't become so scary anymore. It loses a lot of its power.
Yeah. And that's the key, like you said,
Yep.
right? And so is that the conversation you're having with the subconscious too, is what's the emotional response to these types of situations? Or
it's usually more about, okay, let's say if we stick with the fear of failure, where's this coming from? Right? And again, usually it's something from the childhood, right? Let's say if we take, and it's interesting because it's sometimes when you think about it from a logical perspective with a conscious mind, again, it's usually something very minor that when you think about it with a conscious mind, you're like, yeah, but that was like 20 years ago. That doesn't make a difference anymore. For example, let's say you were 5 years old and you were at a school play and you were supposed to be the tree and just standing there in the background, swaying a little bit back and forth, and you fell and everybody started laughing, right? So now you look back and maybe you laugh about it too. Yeah, but your subconscious mind was like, okay, if I'm somewhere on stage, people will laugh. So now you're supposed to hold a presentation and you're sweating and you go, why? Because you fell. You were that tree that everybody laughed about. So we're going back to, okay, where's this coming from? And this was this one situation in your life. That doesn't mean it's going to happen again. And if it does happen again, we have a lot more tools now that we can draw from. So it's not going to be this traumatic experience anymore. And then, so yeah, eventually, sure, you're right. It's about emotion, right? But you want to explain what's happening actually. And then the emotion can be released, if you will.
That makes a lot of sense. And I wonder, because the example you gave is a great one. It was kind of a precipitating event. Right? It was kind of stuck with us. And
exactly.
But I also know a lot of imposter syndrome and, some of these deeper fears too are tied to messages that maybe we got from our parents about expectations that were put upon us. And if we still have perhaps similar dynamics in those relationships today, so they're not in history, they're happening now, is there a way to work with that and then sort of almost, you're still experiencing a lot of those messages, but you almost hear them differently? Or
right. So, and that happens a lot, that we kind of seek the same kind of relationships that we grew up in, right? If we grew up in abusive households, maybe we're choosing an abusive spouse, and that just like carries on. And that is a little bit difficult because we as coaches or as hypnotists, it's not my job to tell you, hey, you need to leave your spouse, right? so that's always like a very, very fine line there. But what we can do in situations like that is just making the subconscious mind understand, because sometimes it's like this feeling for the subconscious mind of, okay, it's going to get a lot worse until it can get better, right? And just understanding that this is part of the process, that sometimes things do get worse before they can get better, and that we're adults, that whatever life throws us out, we can handle it. We'll figure out a way, because we're still here. We survived whatever happened in the childhood. We figured it out. Yeah, we have some bruises and some scars, and that's okay, but we figure it out. And then just go from there and let the client then draw their own conclusions.
That's a good point. That's a different level of doing that kind of psychotherapy, right?
Right. And that's also a point that I always try to get across. I'm a social psychologist. I'm not a psychotherapist. So I do not do therapy. If I get the feeling during a session, hey, you really should be talking to somebody about your mental health, about whatever it is, like your abusive relationship or something like that, I will refer them out to a therapist, because my job is transformational hypnosis. My job is, like I said earlier, to get you to take action. I will not attempt to do any kind of therapy whatsoever. That's just not my expertise. And I'm not going to put myself in hot water and do something that I'm not qualified for.
No, that makes perfect sense. And so how would people know? I mean, obviously there are some good signals from what we've been talking about, but are there specific things that people listening could think about as indicators of whether what you offer is the right fit or the most efficient path for them? Like, are there certain things that kind of tell you, yeah, hypnosis is probably a really good option for me?
The interesting part about hypnosis is it's usually not something that you think about as your first solution when you have any kind of problem, right? You're not like, oh, I'm dealing with X, Y, that. Let me go see a hypnotist.
Right.
You're usually going every other route. You're taking courses, you're reading books, maybe you actually are going to therapy, whatever it is. So what I feel is when clients really get stuck, when they're at a point in their life where they're like, okay, I tried a lot of things and this all did not work for me, and I keep falling back into those old habits. I know exactly what I have to do. I maybe even understand where it's coming from, but I cannot change it. That's when we come in as hypnotists, right? Because a lot of times clients already have done a lot of work and they're already very aware of where their patterns are coming from. Not all the time, but a lot of the times, because they have done so much work around the topic. And that actually makes it for us a lot easier, because then it's really just this click of a finger and you can release it because a lot of the work has already been done.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And if people haven't gone through a lot of the other support that's out there yet, would you recommend hypnosis as a first step?
I would, because it will make things a lot easier for you. You don't have to go through 30 years of trial and error. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking that.
So, and I would love for people to be like, hey, I have a problem. Let me go to a hypnotist. But unfortunately, as a society, we're still not at that point. But yes, if you're a very open-minded person and you're like, okay, I'm struggling with something and I want to go see a hypnotist, yes, please do that, because it will make things so much easier. And I'm talking not only from like the client's experiences that I had, but my own experience. Like there's so much in my life that I was struggling with for so long. And then when I learned, in my case, then self-hypnosis, I was like, really? It could have been so easy. Are you kidding me? And you get kind of mad because you've been working on this for 15 years and then you find out, really? So yes, please.
I love it. And so now that people listening are thinking, oh my gosh, I can't wait to go out and get hypnosis, where can people find you if they want to learn more about your particular services?
The easiest way to find me is directly over my website. It's jenniferfidder.com. And from there, you have a contact form, you have links to my social, to like media appearances, if you want to go through podcast episodes or articles that I wrote. So that's usually the first stop, jenniferfidder.com. And from there, you can then just stalk me if you want.
That's perfect. I'll make sure that's in the show notes for anybody who's interested. And thank you so much, Jennifer. This has been fascinating. I'm just so personally curious about your work, and I'm so grateful to you for sharing it with us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Kim. It was great.
Thanks so much for listening to the Impostor Syndrome Files. If you would like to continue this conversation in a safe and trusted space, I would love for you to join my virtual discussion group every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. For the past several years, the group has been limited to women, but it is now open, regardless of gender, to anyone who is interested in exploring and troubleshooting common workplace challenges, building better awareness of ourselves and others, and becoming more inclusive allies at work. Check out the show notes for more info on how to find us, and please join us next week for another episode of the Impostor Syndrome Files.